Good day, everyone. We're here at the Postgraduate Institute of Management with Dr. A.K.L. Jayawardane, Senior Consultant at PIM and one of the founder members of Sri Lanka Association for Productivity and Quality. The Postgraduate Institute of Management, University of Sri Jayawardene has partnered with AMDISA to co-host the AMDISA 2016 Executive Council Meeting and Regional Conference, along with the Institute of Certified Professional Managers. Here with us now is Dr. Jayawardane, and he will be speaking with us about productivity, quality, and process reengineering. Welcome to our program today.
Yes, thank you very much. It's an opportunity to discuss with you on all these areas.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about what does productivity and quality entail in terms of businesses?
Basically, all organizations want to improve productivity and quality, but unfortunately that they have not really gone into terms or to understand what really it is. In fact, every CEO would say that our organization want to improve in both these areas. So productivity basically is the more difficult factor, because productivity is a measurement on how well you utilize your resources in respect to your outputs. And in the case of quality, it's in everybody's life and everyday life. It happens in how much and how well you can compete with quality, especially in a very competitive environment. So these two go in hand, and there are a lot of misconceptions as well. Some would say you can't improve productivity without sacrificing quality. So that's one of the bigger misconceptions. And I trust the productivity is, when you improve productivity, quality too improves. That's the basis that we like to argue on.
Okay. And what are some of the systems that you would recommend that should be in place to maintain high standards of productivity and quality?
I think I'd like to make it in a very simple way. Productivity is basically an attitude of mind. Even though it's taken it as to define as a ratio of output versus input, people should have a positive attitude. This is where that sometimes people like us who in Sri Lanka probably lags behind when compared to other countries such as Singapore, Australia, US, etc., where they have, or Japan, where they have a high increased productivity. Because in every activity and what you do, we want to improve. So how do you really put this across down to a baseline is just three simple systems of how can we improve our systems, processes, and people. So if you just look back to many organizations and ask the question, what have you improved in your systems in the last 5 years? And you would find most of the time people have the same old system working, or the same old technology being adopted, with the exception of very few who really move forward. When it comes to processes, they are more convenient with the existing processes rather than trying to improve processes. And especially in service productivity, you have to have very improved service processes where you have to get the customer satisfaction. I think the last but the area where we are very much focused and concerned is on the people. Given that companies try to improve on their systems and to a great extent and try and improve on their processes and technology, they tend to forget about the human capital. Now here it's not easy to get people involved. So the essence of productivity is how well you get your people involved in these processes of improvement. It is also same for the quality, because without people being involved at each level, it's very difficult to achieve both these. So just to sum up, it's a question your ability to improve systems, processes, and people that would put you across whether you can improve productivity or quality, of course driven by top management leadership.
All right. What are some of the national efforts that have taken place in terms of productivity and quality here in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question that you're putting it across. Say 20 years ago, we hardly spoke about productivity in the national drive. It was late Mr. Athulat Mudali, it was about 20 years ago, who first wanted to get this idea across into the national productivity movement in Sri Lanka, and then suggested that we should have a national productivity secretariat put across and to get some sort of a productivity drive in Sri Lanka. That's to make people aware what productivity is. So previously there was hardly any knowledge about productivity or national drive towards productivity. This led to a establishment later on, that's around 10 years ago, International Productivity Movement. And then they put across a National Productivity Secretariat. And main functions now they are taking lead is giving productivity awards to, initially it was manufacturing and service sector. Now they have moved into school sector. Idea was to get everybody engaged in the productivity drive in Sri Lanka, just like in Singapore. Somewhat they were successful to some extent. Now to give you an example, basically getting the school children involved in productivity, get them understand what productivity is. They have very good national productivity drive in schools, and PIM is happy to sponsor 1 or 2 schools per year as a CSR project along with Productivity Secretariat. And what we basically do is get these productivity drivers and how productivity can be improved in the school and get the kids to understand their workplace arrangement. That's basic 5 S methods. And then improvements in teaching methods, attention to physical environment, how they can do across, and social responsibility. And they go to even to an extent where try and get the productivity drive into homes. They give awards and see how your home is more accustomed to better work methods, in the sense how you keep the place clean and neat. So this is one of our successful drives. This is supplemented also by a national award in 5 S Archimate Award. It's done by Justica, which takes across all companies to apply for this award, both service sector and productivity. And it's basically good housekeeping practices and then improving productivity results through 5 years. I think these two has come to stay, and there is some general awareness and a much better awareness now that the need to improve productivity. And then also they are quite knowledgeable about how to improve using techniques such as 5 years, just in time, and some of the quality circles and then employee involvement strategies. These things now the companies are more keen to work across. So I would say that national drive is in place, but not very dynamic as in Singapore. The thing is to be critical of Sri Lankans governments. In Singapore, it's the president who gives National Productivity Award. In Sri Lanka, I don't think it has come to that level, where the top level of government or ministers would get engaged in the productive drive after the late Atlas Mudali, and there was hardly anything. It's another function. So we have a long way to go when compared to Singapore. That's at the national level.
Okay. So what is the scope for improvement, do you think, at the national level?
National level, I think they have to support the national productivity drive taken by the National Productivity Secretariat, because they are doing a lot of good work in trying to give awards, in trying to encourage people and putting people across. But it needs more political support, political will, where basically, if you look at our national economy, it's about 20% is on agriculture. So now about another 29-30% is around manufacturing, and over 55% is on services. And if you take agriculture sector, we have very low productivity. Our yield per acre in every area is very low, including tea, rubber, coconut, main crops. So and basically when you import, it is at a lower price than we manufacture. Same thing with sugar. So somebody has to understand this, and how do we really improve? That's a national drive on that. Similarly in manufacturing, even though we really want to improve on our manufacturing sector, comparatively, even when compared to India or the other SAARC countries, some sectors our productivity is poor, other than in Sri Lankan government sector, where they are maintaining a certain level of productivity. So again, there the government has to really take steps to see how we can drive companies towards the achievement of productivity. And the third, one of the reasons which most people will not agree is we have too many holidays when compared to all other countries in the world. So unless you really improve your labor productivity, that you cut down on your holidays, I don't think people would like to say that I am saying that, but I would say in compared to all other countries, you just can't improve productivity unless you reduce the number of holidays. We work only roughly about out of 365 days, about 280, 285 days, and that too with too many holidays in. So it's very difficult to get productivity. And also in the public sector, productivity is fairly poor. People really don't understand. But there have been some improvements in the sector. That's in the national drive. So it's basically a political will which has to go in line with the productivity secretariat and try and improve it, and to understand if you were to come to the levels like in Singapore, etc.
And it would have tangible impact on the economy.
That is the way it has to go, because we have to have our GDP improved. You have to have our per capita income improved, even though we have a high per capita income. Productivity-wise, I think we are at a lower level, especially labor productivity, and also multi-factor productivity is fairly low. Coming from that, I think what I would like to put is there are 4 areas we look. First is national level productivity. If the national level productivity were to improve, then the industry level productivity has to improve. So government will look at what industry can we improve, where we have resources. Sri Lanka has a lot of resources abundant. How best can we utilize these resources to improve productivity in that sector? Say, for example, ceramics, we have the raw material. Can we compete against the world? We have the rubber. We, I think, export about 80% of our meat solid tire, but are we productive? So government has to look at areas where we have abundance of resources and how well can we improve productivity in that. Then third comes from the national to the industry to the company. So company level productivity is basically a manager's concern. He has to see how best company level productivity can be improved. And company level productivity will have to be linked into the individual level. I would say we are weak in the company level, because even though productivity national secretaries encourages people to participate, very few companies participate. Now, the last week we had the National Sri Lanka Association of Productivity and Quality encouraging employees to come out with quality improvement projects, continuous improvement projects, quality circles. Of the entire island, we had only about 12 to 15 companies participating, which means that awareness has not gone down. And also in the award level, we had about 150 odd employees participating, but we have a huge workforce. So which again means the companies are not interested in trying to go down to basic levels of, firstly, to improve productivity, secondly, to get people involved, and thirdly, recognize them. So this, I think, we are fairly weak, especially at the company level, and then link it into individual level. So if you don't do these two, obviously the industry level productivity will become less, and then the national productivity will become less. So my suggestion is we have to start at the individual company level and then drive it down to the individual level and see how we can contribute at the other 2 levels of industry and national productivity.
All right. So the theme for this year's conference is management development through international networking and collaborations. In terms of improving productivity and quality in any of the SAARC countries, how would international networking and collaboration within the SAARC countries help, do you think?
I think this is an excellent opportunity for Sri Lankan managers to learn from each other, because there are many good practices and which can be benchmarked from the SAARC region of countries, India, Pakistan, and especially in Indian context, because they have a very high productivity level and their labor productivity is very much higher than us. Therefore, they are able to give at a better product than others. So I think firstly, can we benchmark with them? And secondly, what shall we benchmark? What industry shall we target at? Rather than trying to get it imported from India, say in agricultural sector, Indian products are very much cheaper. If you take into plastic, ceramics, Indian products are much cheaper. So how is that they are able to do it cheaper than us? That's the first thing they should look in. So they should have a collaborative effort and say what are the best practices they are having. In garment manufacturing, we have an edge in the garment manufacturing, but in the question of productivity. Similarly, in other areas like in agriculture and in other manufacturing concerns, India is so huge, so is Pakistan. So I would say this provides you an opportunity to learn from such countries what best practices they have. And there are some Sri Lankan companies already in India who's also doing business, which is also gives an opportunity for exchange of views. So I would say this opportunity would allow people to learn from each other, provided they know what they are really looking for. It's not just a question of speaking to each other, but you must have a very concerned effort. What am I going to look and ask from them? So here is networking would be just probably engaging with each other, speaking with each other, and saying, I think it should go beyond that, tailor-made to us. What industries can we improve from the, as you suggested, on the best practices in those countries.
All right. Would you say that there's anything that's, in terms of productivity and quality, that's unique to Sri Lanka, that it is a Sri Lankan strength that we have here?
In Sri Lankan strengths, one of the best is we have the resources. That's one of the strengths. Second, you have a very good strength in people. Because if you look at compared to all other countries, they are very highly educated. And literacy rate is around 99%. And we have, for a year, if you look at the amount of people who are going through the education system, roughly when you say grade 10, it's about 600,000 students really appear for grade 10, and nearly about 95% of them really get past grade 10. Then from this 600,000, when it goes to the GCA advanced level, that's about grade 12 and above. Another 400,000 enters that, and roughly about 300 to 300,000 really goes through that as well. And from that, those who are eligible to the university is hardly about 5 to 10%, it's about 30,000. So you have about 200,000, 250,000 people who have gone past grade 12 available as a resource to the industry. So you have to see how best can this resource be utilized. So unfortunately, we are very white-collar biased in nation. If you look at and compare with Australia, I've been there for about 10 years with the Australian National University. In Australia, it's very different. And just drawing a parallel, so there, when you get to grade 12, they don't look for going to university itself. If you can't go to the university, there are trade sectors available. You may be a carpenter, you may be a builder, you may be another mechanic. So the students select that option and then do part-time work. And there they recognize the person not by the trade you do, but by the person itself. In Sri Lanka, it's by the trade. If you are a mason, you are not recognized. If you are a plumber, you are not recognized. In Australia, a plumber and mason is a person who probably takes much more than even a lecturer. In outside society, it's same. So there's a big issue with the social perceptions. In Australia, somebody in a very rich family over there will go to they will tell the student, your parents would say, you go and earn your money. So about $10, $15 an hour, they will go and work in a supermarket. Now the same parent who has sent the child to Australia and who works in a supermarket will never send that child to Food City or Cargill's in Sri Lanka. Because he would do that to Woolworth, etc., but not here. Why? Because of the perception. So this is one of the barriers that we have, and we are breeding white collars. So therefore the students move into SIMA, SIM, double AT, double degrees, as much as possible for paper qualifications. This somebody has to address. Without that, we will be having a lot of social issues. We have a human capital looking for paper qualifications, a lot of talent, but not moving into the industry. Even as of today, there are a lot of vacancies in the garment industry. People don't want to go to that industry. There's vacancies in the tea industry. People don't want to move into the tea industry. So every child wants to become either a doctor or an engineer or someone at a higher level. I won't challenge that. That should be the ambition. But what about this 70% who is not there? So unless they get engaged in the industry, you cannot improve productivity or the national level or improve your overall economy. So that's a very difficult proposition, but I don't know how they would do that. But what suggestion is, like in India, you have many colleges. There also, again, there are people with many degrees, but there are TAFE colleges, like in Australia, where you can encourage people to go for other trades and then get engaged. The government is on that direction to a certain extent. Hopefully they'll succeed.
The technical colleges.
Technical colleges, but more on job orientation. And the other part comes to the society. Society should not look down when someone is working as a carpenter or as a plumber because they think it's a lower grade job. And here we recognize people by the job. That is the pathetic part of it. You should recognize the personality, not the job. As long as we do that, we will only have a set of white collar people who we can't fill that amount with a lot of work. So we'll have a lot of unemployed youth who will be restless.
All right, and what would you suggest perhaps to bring those youth into the workforce and maybe even change perceptions about the jobs such as carpentry, etc.?
You see, this is the national challenge, but I don't think that any government has really understood and attempt to add to this.
Is there a link between the pay level and the perception, or is it?
It's a perception, it's not the pay level. Pay level would be now, if you go into those trades, they can still get higher pay. You see, if you look at in Sri Lanka, you will find lots of people wearing a tie. I hate even to come like this. I told when I was asked, I said, don't ask me to come in this. You are inviting the dress but not the person. I said, no, that's a formal occasion. And unusually high number of people, if you work across, are getting used to wearing a tie and moving across and full suit. It's not so in Australia. It's not so much in Sri Lanka, but here also you could see in the case of insurance agents, etc. Give a person a tie and then a job, they feel this is a very sophisticated job. So that perception has gone in. So you can't do carpentry with a tie, you can't do that with the mason over there. So this is I would say a social issue. How do we really, as you suggest, how do you get them to the workforce? How do you get these intelligent people to come and contribute to the national economy? So it has to come in by way of technical colleges and then also getting into the mainstream work. Even university graduates won't go into the private sector. They are looking for a government job. So this has become a national problem. I don't see any government has really addressed this question. How do you really move from here to that? Now, I'll give an example. Here people will not work 8 hours. Beyond 8 hours, there will be difficulty. I have seen the same people in Australia working 16 hours without any questions asked. So when these people go outside the country, they are prepared to do work, any work. But in the country, they are not prepared to give their full effort to the first 8 hours. And that's why I think our industry is falling behind. And especially in value-added productivity, the wealth created is not measured correctly across. So that may be one way of improving.
Okay, and perhaps by through conferences such as these issues can be brought up and further discussed.
I think you could bring it from the conferences, the national issues to some part. How do we mobilize young, educated people into a national workforce? How does the other countries really do this across? What are the main methods over there? Now, there, especially if I compare, because I've been in Australia, I take that example out of the thing. Because I studied in India, of course, for about 5 years, did my first degree in Madras. There, I would say, even at grade 10, people will go to work elsewhere. And then in even grade 12, they will work in workplaces. And there is a thing, they can come back to university even after age 40. Now that option is not here. Now here if you look at the child's life is very structured. By about 16, 17 you pass these A-levels, O-levels and then come to university around 20s and then 20, 25 you try and finish your degree if university is not on strike. And then 27, 28, the parents is looking how to get you married across. Then it's a married life. Then the children. So it's very structured. You have to fall into this structure. In a country like Australia, this challenge is not so. There the parents say, go and survive. So you'll go and work somewhere. And then the education comes, sometimes some people enter the education after gaining experience in the workplace. So I have taught students in my classroom who's 35, 40, 45 in the master's level. Then they feel I should come back and learn something from the industry. So it's a difficult one. I don't know how these conferences may have to address these specific issues. How does the developing countries mobilize educated people into their workforce? And why we are unable to do that?
And what is the definition of educated as well.
Yes, what is education as well, what do you really mean by, because that's pointless if, and that's the other issue here, because we are very theoretical in our approaches. We are not more applied into that areas of work. And what is the use of a workforce who is very educated with so many qualifications, but inability to come into the workforce? One good example is selection process since in HR in Australia and here. There, if you apply for a job, qualification comes last, because they would look at the skill set. What are the skills that you have learned in the last few years, and then address the selection criteria which addresses the required skills. And lastly, they will look at what your education qualification is. It's a requirement. I won't say it's not so, but they give priority to the skills gained. I have not seen it any of the Asian countries looking for skills criteria for selection. So that's something which I think the conferences can address. We have a great need to ask, how do we mobilize young, educated people into a profitable workforce, without which you just cannot improve productivity or quality.
It seems like a very important question that should be addressed.
I think it should be put interest over there. It's a difficult one to answer, so when the questions are difficult and the solutions are difficult, we tend to just forget about this and then go in the other parts of directions. These are too controversial. I made few controversial statements, so therefore people like to stay away from that controversy as much as possible.
But it would help us move forward.
I think it will. I believe that's if you find an answer to get educated workforce, educated people into the workforce, rather than looking at white-collar work and rather than increasing the public sector burden, that is the only solution people like in these countries can move forward.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. It's been very interesting speaking with you.
Thank you very much. Have a pleasant day.